The storm came fast that night, like the sky had cracked open over the Montana plains. Snow swallowed the road, and visibility dropped to nothing. Officer Reed Carter gripped the steering wheel, his patrol truck crawling through the whiteout. Dispatch had gone silent 10 minutes ago. That's when his headlights caught movement. A dark shape hunched by the roadside, half buried in the snow. A German shepherd. And just beside it, something small, wrapped in a soaked blanket. The dog raised its head, eyes glowing with desperate protectiveness. Reed's gut clenched. There was a baby out here, and the dog wasn't letting anyone near. The radio crackled once and died again. Reed slammed the heel of his hand against the console. Come on, damn it. Nothing, just the hiss of static. He cut the siren, stepped out into the howling dark, and the wind nearly shoved him backward. Snow bit into his face like shards of glass. His flashlight beam sliced through the blizzard, white upon white, until it caught the shape again. The German shepherd stood its ground, trembling, its fur crusted with ice. Its muzzle was streaked with blood. "Hey there, boy," Reed called, his voice barely audible above the storm. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The dog bared its teeth. Reed froze, not out of fear, but respect. He'd seen that look before in his K-9 partner years ago, right before the gunfire. Loyalty that wouldn't break, even for death. The baby whimpered. Reed's heart kicked hard in his chest. He crouched slowly, lowering the flashlight beam so it wouldn't blind the dog. "All right," he murmured. "You're protecting someone. I get it. Let's do this together." He inched forward until he saw the bundle more clearly. A baby, maybe a few months old, face pink from the cold but alive. Reed shrugged off his jacket and spread it open with shaking hands. The dog growled low, stepping between him and the child. "Easy," he whispered. "I'm not taking her. I'm saving her." The shepherd's tail flicked, uncertain. Its legs buckled. It was freezing to death, but still refusing to move. Reed reached for his jacket pocket and pulled out a strip of jerky. He kept on long shifts. He tossed it forward gently. The dog's nose twitched. It hesitated, then lunged forward and devoured it in seconds. "There we go," Reed said softly. "You've done your part, hero." He edged closer, dropped to his knees beside the baby, and wrapped her in his jacket. The dog gave a weak bark, collapsing beside him. "Oh, no," Reed muttered, pressing a hand to its chest. The heartbeat was faint. "Hang in there, pal." He scooped the baby into his arms, then tried to lift the shepherd. Too heavy. He glanced toward the truck. 40 yards back, half buried in drifts. "All right," he muttered, "one trip at a time." He carried the baby first, shielding her with his body against the wind. Once she was safe inside the truck, wrapped in his emergency blanket, he turned back for the dog. When he returned, the shepherd wasn't moving. "Come on," Reed shouted, dropping to his knees, gathering the limp body into his arms. "Not like this. Not after what you did." He stumbled to the truck, shoved the passenger door open, and laid the dog on the seat beside the baby. Then he slammed the heater on full and drove. The road was gone. His tires spun uselessly. Somewhere in the storm, a wolf howled. By the time he reached the nearest ranger station, a squat wooden building half hidden under snowdrifts, Reed's fingers had gone numb. He kicked the door open and yelled, "I need help." A young ranger, barely 20, appeared with a flashlight. "Jesus, officer, what happened?" "Found him on Route 22, Reed said, his voice raw. "A baby and a dog. Hypothermic, maybe worse." They laid both on a table by the stove. Reed rubbed the shepherd's chest with a towel, desperate to see movement. "Where's the mother?" the ranger asked. Reed's jaw tightened. Didn't see anyone else. The baby cried weakly, a thin sound against a roaring wind. Reed's throat burned. He'd seen plenty of awful things in his 10 years on the job, but this felt personal, fragile, like holding the only flicker of life left in the world. The ranger returned with hot water bottles and blankets. Reed wrapped the baby tighter, noticing for the first time the tiny silver bracelet on her wrist. Emma. The name was engraved in delicate script. Below it, a date of birth, January 13th, 25. Today's date. Reed's breath caught. She's newborn, he said quietly. She must have been born today. The ranger blinked. Out there? In this storm? Reed nodded slowly. And that dog been guarding her since. The shepherd stirred faintly, letting out a broken whine. Reed smiled through exhaustion. That's it, buddy. Stay with me. The ranger frowned. You think it belonged to the family? Has to, Reed said. Nobody dumps a dog like this. Not in weather like this. He stood, grabbed the radio, and tried again to reach dispatch. The static screamed back at him. Power lines must be down, the ranger said. Reed stared at the baby, then the dog. Something gnawed at the back of his mind. A wrongness he couldn't name. He turned to the ranger. We'll need to check the area at first light. There's got to be a vehicle nearby. The young man nodded, uneasy. You think maybe the mother? Don't. Reed cut him off. Not until we know. By dawn, the storm had quieted. The world outside looked carved from ice and silence. Reed and the ranger hiked back toward the spot where he'd found them. Snow crunched under their boots. The wind was gone now. Only stillness remained. About half a mile down the road, Reed found the first clue, a shredded piece of blue fabric caught in a fence. Then, a few yards farther, a car, nose first in a ditch, its windshield caved in. He stopped dead. Blood smeared the steering wheel. Reed yanked the door open. No driver. Just a baby seat in the back. Empty. A woman's purse half buried under snow. He dug it out, brushing away the frost. Inside, an ID card. Megan Turner, age 32. Reed's pulse quickened. The name sounded familiar. He'd seen it before, on a missing persons bulletin 3 months ago. A domestic abuse case gone quiet after the husband's statement. She went missing last year, he muttered. They said she ran off. The ranger frowned. So how'd she end up here with a baby? Reed stared out across the white fields, the unease twisting deeper. The blizzard had buried more than just footprints. It had covered a story, one that didn't want to be found. The shepherd had protected that baby with its life, which meant someone hadn't wanted the baby to live long enough to be found. Reed turned toward the horizon. Pack up, he said. We're not done. Back at the ranger station, the baby was sleeping, the dog curled near the stove. Its breathing was steadier now. Reed knelt beside it and stroked its fur. You did good, boy, he whispered. You kept her safe. The dog's eyes fluttered open, golden and watchful. Reed smiled faintly. You've earned a name. Let's call you Guardian. The shepherd blinked slowly, as if understanding. The ranger leaned against the counter. What now, officer? Reed looked toward the window, where the storm had left the world silent and clean. Now, he said, we find out who was supposed to die last night. The morning light came thin and colorless, painting everything in shades of blue and gray. The storm had stopped, but the cold hadn't loosened its grip. Reed's breath clouded the air as he stared at the crash site, notebook in hand, every instinct whispering that what he saw wasn't the full picture. The baby, Emma, was safe back at the ranger station. The shepherd, now called Guardian, had taken some water and was sleeping again by the fire. That gave Reed a few hours to figure out how this all fit together. He circled the wrecked SUV slowly, noting the angle of the skid marks. The deep trench in the snowbank where the front bumper had buried itself. Too clean, too straight. Doesn't look like she swerved, he muttered. The young ranger, Mason, according to his badge, shifted uneasily beside him. You think someone forced her off the road? Reed squatted, brushing away snow near the driver's side door. Faint boot prints, half filled by drift, led away from the car. 2 sets. One smaller, barefoot impressions fading fast, the other heavier and deeper, as if someone had been dragging weight. She tried to run, Reed said quietly, and someone followed. Mason swallowed. And the baby? She must have hit her. Or maybe Guardian did. Reed stood, scanning the vast white silence. Either way, that dog didn't just wander out here. He followed the footprints up the ridge. A few hundred yards on, they stopped abruptly beside a frozen creek. The ice had been disturbed, cracked. A single glove lay at the edge. Reed's stomach dropped. He knelt, touching the fabric. Women's glove. Faded pink, small. Megan Turner, he whispered. The wind shifted, carrying a low moan through the trees. Mason flinched. What was that? Reed straightened. The wind, he said, but his voice lacked conviction, because it hadn't sounded like the wind. They made it back to the ranger station by noon. The snow had begun to glitter under the weak sun, but the world still felt hollowed out, like the storm had scraped it clean of life. Inside, warmth hit them like a wall. Guardian raised his head when Reed entered. The dog's tail thumped faintly, but its eyes tracked Reed with a strange, knowing intensity. Hey, buddy. Reed crouched beside him. You did your job. Now it's my turn. Mason went to check the radio. Still dead. Reed picked up the baby, who stirred and made a small, sleepy sound, then settled again against his chest. There was something about her weight, her fragility, that pressed on a place in him he'd spent years boarding up. He hadn't held a baby since. No, he didn't let himself finish the thought. Not since her. He laid Emma back in a blanket, tucking the corners tight, then turned to Mason. We need to check the missing persons database when power's back. I know this woman's face from somewhere. Mason nodded. You think the father... Reed, cut in. Let's not guess yet. But inside, his mind was already pulling the pieces together. Megan Turner, missing domestic case. Husband Evan Turner. Claimed she ran off with money and left him broke. No body ever found, no charges filed. Reed had read that file years ago. Evan's record was spotless, but his eyes in the photo, they'd told another story. A controlling one. If Megan had run, she must have been running from him. And now she'd had a baby. Reed poured himself a cup of lukewarm coffee from the thermos, staring out the window. Something about the timing didn't fit. If Emma was born yesterday, then Megan had been pregnant all this time, hidden somewhere, living off-grid, and she'd picked last night to drive through a blizzard? No, that wasn't coincidence. That was desperation. By evening, the power flickered back. The radio hissed, sputtered, then finally came to life. Reed grabbed the mic. This is Officer Reed Carter, badge 2125, requesting connection to Helena PD. Priority case, child endangerment and possible homicide. A woman's voice crackled through. Copy that, Officer Carter. Go ahead. Reed gave a concise report. Discovery location, baby, dog, vehicle, missing woman. The dispatcher promised to forward it to Detective Ruiz and Helena, who'd worked the Turner case before. When he hung up, Mason was staring at the baby's bracelet. You think she named the baby after herself? Megan, Emma. Kind of close. Reed tilted his head. Could be. Or maybe she was naming her after someone she lost. Mason hesitated. You've seen this kind of thing before? Reed's gaze dropped to the fire. Too many times. They slept in shifts that night. The station creaked and sighed in the cold. Guardian wouldn't leave the baby's side. Reed dozed in a chair by the stove, the kind of shallow sleep that left every nerve awake. At some point near dawn, a sound woke him, a low growl. Guardian stood rigid, hackles up, eyes fixed on the door. Reed rose silently, reaching for his sidearm. Mason stirred, blinking. What? Shoo! Reed motioned for silence. The doorknob rattled once. Then 3 slow knocks. Reed's pulse spiked. Who's there, he called. No answer. He crept closer, keeping the gun low. This is Officer Carter with County Law Enforcement. Identify yourself. A pause. Then a man's voice, rough and calm. I'm looking for my wife. She was in an accident last night. Reed froze. What's your name? Evan Turner. Mason shot him a look. The husband. Reed unlatched the safety quietly. Opened the door an inch. A man stood there, mid-30s tall. Dark parka zipped his chin. Snow crusted his beard. His expression was steady, too steady. Officer Carter. Evan said, extending a gloved hand. Thank God you're here. I've been searching all night. Reed didn't move. You picked a hell of a night to search. Evan's eyes flicked past him, Scanning the interior of the station, I saw the crash up the road. My wife, was she here? Reed's tone stayed neutral. You said your wife. You reported her missing months ago. Evan gave a strained laugh. Yeah, we had problems. But she called me yesterday. Said she was coming home. I figured she'd try to make it before the storm hit. Reed studied him. His pupils didn't dilate, like someone who'd been in the cold all night. His gloves were clean. No frostbite on his cheeks. He'd been in a car. Warm. Nearby. Did you find anything in the wreck? Evan asked, voice tightening. Anything of hers? Reed lied smoothly. No one was there when I arrived. Evan's jaw flexed. So you didn't find the baby? The silence between them turned brittle. Reed's finger brushed the trigger guard. How do you know there was a baby? Evan blinked, caught off guard for a split second, then smiled, sharp and thin. Because she was pregnant. Officer. You must have noticed the car seat. He stepped forward slightly, tone turning coaxing. Listen, I just need to see her. Make sure she's... Guardian barked once, low and threatening. Evan's eyes shifted to the dog, and something flickered there. Recognition. Fear. Reed's decision came instantly. You should come inside, Mr. Turner. Warm up. Evan hesitated, then stepped over the threshold. His eyes swept the room again, the blankets, the baby's basket near the stove. Reed moved subtly, placing himself between Evan and the child. Mason broke the tension with a forced smile. Can I get you coffee? Please, Evan said. As Mason turned, Reed caught his arm briefly, whispering, Call Helena, quietly. Mason nodded and disappeared into the back room. Evan's smile didn't reach his eyes. I appreciate you taking care of them, officer. My wife, she's been unwell. Not herself. Reed kept his expression unreadable. Unwell how? She's paranoid. Thinks people are after her. He stopped, forcing a pained look. She took our family dog and vanished. Guess he came back, huh? He nodded toward Guardian, who growled again. Reed's mind clicked. The dog had attacked him before, blood on its muzzle. Maybe not from the cold. Maybe from defending her. You're saying the dog's yours? Reed asked. Yeah, name's Ranger. The dog's ears flattened at the sound, a deep rumble building in its chest. Reed smiled faintly. Seems he prefers the name Guardian now. Evan's expression tightened. Funny. Minutes crawled by. Mason hadn't returned yet. The radio in the back room crackled faintly. Reed decided to push. You said your wife called you. Where from? Evan shrugged. Didn't say. Just said she forgave me. Wanted to come home. You too had a history of violence. Evan's eyes flashed. That's not true. I read the report. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Reports can say anything when a woman's angry enough. Guardian's growl deepened. The baby stirred and whimpered. Evan's gaze snapped to her, and for a split second, the mask dropped. Something cold and possessive flickered there. Reed's stomach turned. He knew that look. Predators didn't always need fangs. He stepped closer, voice low. You should stay right there, Mr. Turner. Evan tilted his head, smiling again, that same brittle calm. You think I'm dangerous? Reed didn't answer. He didn't need to. Suddenly, the radio in the back blared to life. Helena PD, Officer Carter, come in. We have confirmation. Evan Turner, suspected Megan Turner's homicide warrant. Approach with... Evan lunged. The table crashed sideways, hot coffee spilling across the floor. Guardian leapt, teeth flashing, colliding with Evan's arm as Reed dove for the baby. Mason burst out of the back, gun drawn. Drop it. Reed shouted. Evan slammed Guardian against the wall, the dog yelping but biting harder, refusing to let go. Blood splattered across the wood floor. Reed fired once into the ceiling. Enough. Evan froze, panting, eyes wild. You don't understand. She took everything from me. She... Reed leveled his gun. She took your child out of hell. That's all. Evan's shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked utterly hollow. Then, without warning, he bolted to the side door into the snow. Guardian, stay. Reed yelled, but the dog tore free, chasing into Storm. "Reed!" Mason shouted. "We can't!" But Reed was already gone, plunging into the white, the baby's cries echoing behind him. Outside, the cold bit deep, the wind carrying faint tracks across the powder. Reed followed them downhill toward the frozen creek, his boots slipping on ice. A dark shape moved ahead. Evan, stumbling, one arm bloody from the dog's bite. "Turner!" Reed shouted. "It's over!" Evan turned, breath ragged. "You think you can just take her from me? She was mine." Before Reed could answer, the ice beneath Evan groaned. A split second later, it cracked open. The scream vanished into the roar of freezing water. Reed rushed forward, dropping to his knees. "Evan!" Nothing but bubbles rising, then silence. He reached out instinctively, and then he saw it. Something half frozen under the ice. A face, eyes wide and empty. Megan Turner. Her body had been trapped beneath the surface all along. Reed's throat tightened as the pieces fell into place. She'd tried to escape him last night. He'd caught her. She'd fought and died, but not before she'd hidden her newborn and sent the dog to guard her. The storm hadn't buried the truth. It had preserved it. By the time Reed returned, the baby was asleep again, Guardian limping but alive, curled protectively beside her. Mason looked up, face pale. "Is it over?" Reed nodded faintly. "Yeah, it's over." He sat beside the stove, snow melting off his jacket, eyes distant. "Sometimes," he murmured, "the only witnesses that tell the truth can't speak at all." He reached down, stroking Guardian's fur. The dog pressed closer, sighing. Outside, the blizzard had passed. The horizon was pink with morning. 2 days later, the storm had cleared entirely. The world outside the ranger station gleamed with cruel brightness, sunlight bouncing off snowdrifts like shards of glass. To anyone passing through, it looked peaceful, but Reed Carter knew better. Peace was just the quiet that settled after chaos, the echo of something unfinished. Helena PD had arrived that morning. Detective Ruiz, gray-bearded, sharp-eyed, and quiet as a blade, stood with Reed near the thawing creek, where the ice had cracked. Evan Turner's body had been recovered at dawn, frozen mid-struggle, his face contorted with a final, desperate rage. Ruiz knelt, poking at the edge of the hole. "Hell of a way to go," he muttered. Reed nodded, arms crossed, jaw tight. He earned it. Ruiz gave him a look. That the cop talking? Or the man? Reed didn't answer. He wasn't sure he could. The wind shifted, carrying a faint scent of pine and thawing earth. Somewhere far off, Guardian barked once, a steady, grounding sound that broke through the stillness. "Dog something else," Ruiz said. "Vet says he'll be fine." "He deserves a medal," Reed replied quietly. "Or at least a warm home." Ruiz straightened, brushing off his gloves. "You thinking of keeping him?" Reed hesitated. He wanted to say yes, but wanting something and being ready for it were two different things. "I don't know," he said finally. "I've already failed one family." Ruiz studied him a moment longer, then nodded toward the station. "Let's go finish the report." Back inside, warmth flooded Reed's skin. Mason sat near the stove, baby Emma cradled in his arms, rocking her with an awkward tenderness. Guardian lay beside them, bandaged paw resting on the floor, his eyes half closed but alert. "She just ate," Mason said softly as Reed entered. "Didn't even cry this time." Reed managed a small smile. "Good girl." He crossed to the desk where a dozen forms were spread, statements, reports, evidence logs. But his attention kept drifting to the tiny sound of Emma's breathing. Ruiz stood near the window, lighting a cigarette. He didn't offer one. He knew Reed had quit years ago, after the crash that took his wife and daughter. After that night, when snow had meant something else entirely. Reed forced the memory back down. He had buried it deep, but this case, the storm, the child, the dog, had dug it back up like bones from frost. "Carter," Ruiz said quietly, "you all right?" Reed looked up. "Yeah, just tired." Ruiz exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. "You're never just tired. You're the guy who carries ghosts." "Guess I collect them," Reed muttered. Ruiz's gaze softened. Well, this one's had a chance to live. That's more than most of us ever get. The investigation moved fast. Evidence confirmed everything Reed had suspected. Megan Turner's injuries, the bruising on her wrists, the dog hair on her coat, all consistent with a struggle before she fell into the creek. Her husband's fingerprints on the car door matched the scene perfectly. It was open and shut on paper. But paperwork couldn't explain what Reed had seen. The raw loyalty in Guardian's eyes, the way the dog had refused to abandon the child even as his own body failed. When the case closed, Helena PD took the baby into state custody. For now. They'd find her a foster family. They said. Reed didn't argue. He just nodded. But when the agents drove away, taking Emma in a blanket-lined car seat, something inside him cracked a little more. The silence after was unbearable. That evening, the ranger station felt empty. Mason had gone home. Ruiz had returned to Helena, and the snow outside glowed orange in the dying light. Reed sat at the table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. Guardian padded over quietly, resting his head on Reed's knee. You miss her too, huh? Reed said softly. The dog gave a low huff, eyes solemn. Reed leaned back, running a hand over his face. I don't know what happens now. They'll stick her in some temporary home, probably forget what she went through. And you, he looked down at Guardian, you'll get sent to a shelter if I don't sign the papers. Guardian blinked, tail tapping faintly. Reed sighed. You realize you're guilt-tripping me, right? The dog didn't move. He laughed under his breath. The first time in days. Yeah, fine. I get it. He stood, walked to the desk drawer, and pulled out the adoption form the vet had left earlier that day. Guardian Carter. The name fit. Weeks passed. The thaw came slow that year. Icicles dripping like metronomes from the eaves. The forest shedding its snow inch by inch. Reed went back to patrol, Guardian often riding shotgun. The town came to know them as a pair. The quiet cop and his wolf-eyed partner, who'd once saved a baby in a blizzard. But the nights were still hard. Sometimes, Reed woke to dreams of crying. A baby's, his daughter's, both tangled together until he couldn't tell them apart. Guardian would nudge him awake, pressing a cold nose against his arm, and the sound would fade. Then, one evening in early spring, the phone rang. Officer Carter? It was Ruiz. Yeah, Reed said. Everything all right? You sitting down? That bad? Ruiz chuckled. Depends. The foster placement fell through. Baby Emma's been in temporary care for weeks. The state's been looking for someone local, stable, with ties to the case. Reed went still. What are you saying? I'm saying they're open to unusual arrangements. You've got the background check, the record, and, frankly, the heart for it. They'll listen if you ask. Reed stared at the wall. His heart hammered once, twice. You think I could? I think Megan Turner would want her daughter raised by the man who found her alive. Ruiz said simply. Think about it, Reed. Don't wait too long. The line went dead. Reed sat there for a long time, the ticking clock filling the silence. Guardian lay across the floor, head resting on his paws, eyes watching him like he understood every word. You heard that, didn't you? Reed murmured. They want me to be her dad. Guardian's tail brushed the wood once. Reed swallowed hard. I don't know if I can. What if I screw it up again? What if... He stopped. The old fear pressed tight in his chest. The night his wife's car had gone off the road. The blizzard he couldn't reach her through. The weight he'd carried since. You can't fix the past, he whispered, as much to himself as to the dog. But maybe you can give something back. Guardian lifted his head, ears perked, as if agreeing. 3 months later, on a morning washed with sunlight, Reed stood outside the courthouse, a folded paper trembling slightly in his hand. Guardian sat beside him, leash loose. The baby carrier on his chest was small, warm, and impossibly light. Adoption approved. He stared at the stamped signature for a long time before exhaling slowly. The air felt cleaner somehow. Lighter. Guess it's official, he murmured. Welcome home, Emma. The baby stirred, cooing softly, a tiny fist curling around the edge of his shirt. Guardian wagged his tail once, slow and content. Reed looked out across the parking lot, at the mountains still capped with snow. They gleamed white and distant, like silent witnesses to something reborn. He thought of Megan Turner, of the courage it must have taken to run into that storm alone, of the dog who refused to let her sacrifice mean nothing, and of a man who'd spent years trying to atone for one family he couldn't save, now entrusted with another he might. He smiled faintly. "Let's go home, kid." Epilogue 1 year later. The old cabin outside Helena had never looked more alive. Morning light poured through the windows, catching dust motes that danced in lazy spirals. Reed sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, while Emma, now toddling on unsure legs, tried to feed cereal to Guardian. "Not for puppies," Reed said, laughing. Emma ignored him, shoving another spoonful toward the patient shepherd. Guardian took it with saintly grace. Reed leaned back, letting the laughter fill the house. The sound felt new, not borrowed from the past, not haunted, just alive. Outside, the last traces of winter clung stubbornly to the hills. The world, as always, was in the slow business of thawing. But inside, warmth had already returned. Reed picked up the silver bracelet from the table, the one that had been on Emma's wrist that night. The engraving had dulled with time, but he could still read it. Emma Turner. He smiled softly. "You'll always know where you came from," he said. "But you'll grow up knowing you were loved, too." Guardian's tail thumped once against the floorboards. Emma giggled, mimicking the sound. Reed looked out the window, the sunlight spilling across the fields, and felt, for the first time in years, at peace. The blizzard was long gone, but what it left behind had saved them all.